Oh,
How you doing?
All
I'm
right,
good.
Chris, how are you?
Fantastic, thank you. Fantastic. We need to get
Amazing.
we need to get used to this little delay on Zoom. It's really annoying, isn't there? It's like a tenth of a second or something.
It's usually just me because I'm like, where's the button?
How's everything going? Everything all right?
Thanks. All good. What about you?
Aye, not bad, not bad. Just I'm busy at the moment. Not like out and about doing stuff. It's I've got such a huge backlog of content that has to be edited. It's just
Yeah.
I don't, like all over the whole lockdown thing. I had the odd trip away, but I didn't want to put out loads of trip footage
Fair
because
enough.
you know what I mean. Like a lot of people were locked down and couldn't do it, and I was out there traveling. I thought I'll just not do it. It's not
That was
fair
very
on
kind
people.
of you.
Whereas now I'm like, because we all got back after COVID, didn't we? And it was like all guns
Yes.
blazing. All of a sudden, I've got, gee whiz, just an insane amount of content that I've got to edit. So yeah, I'm locking myself away in my office and just.
It looks
editing.
great, by the way. Your setup's brilliant.
Thanks. Yeah, it's very echoey. That's the thing. I see you've got all your sound insulation.
I mean, I don't know. It still isn't great. Like, see, for voiceover stuff or whatever, it's not properly done, but it suits for the podcast. It's fine because I'm still doing the podcast like 99% of the time remotely, even though we can do it in person. I think just it's the ease in it of people not having to come to the house or me go to them. Although I'd love to get back out and do it in person again. But I went to do a voiceover for something the other week there, and the sound quality is just not quite there for that kind of thing. But it's fine for the podcast. It's totally fine.
It's different, isn't it? Doing a podcast in person than it is like on Zoom,
100%.
as you said. It's nice and easy, and you can chat to people on the other side of the world if you want, or different
Totally.
country. It's nice and easy, but it's not the same, is it? As being
No,
there.
no. And I had done I'd only exclusively done them in person up until the pandemic, so it's quite a transition to go online. But I think it's even more so a transition going back. I did one in person. Luckily, I knew the person. They came to the house, and it was dead easy. But it was just different, and I was a bit nervous before it because I was like, oh God, what am I going to be like in person?
Aye.
Because online I'm just good at doing all the nodding. In person you can't shut me up.
And you can't turn up in your pants either,
Well, I know, because Robert said to me last night, he was like, so he said something about, and Bruce records it, didn't he? And I was like, oh, so he does, he records the video. Thank you for reminding me of that, because I would have been, not that I look very glamorous, but I was like, I would have been like a hedge drawn backwards. So
right,
I've got the ring light on to hide
full
the
influencer. You've gone full influencer mode.
I have.
Right, I saw you've got a brew on the go. I've got a beer. Slang, cheers to your health. Right, Lisa. Folks, this is Lisa Kennedy. You run the Braw and the Brave podcast. Now, this is all your fault.
It's all my fault.
This is your fault. Brew Time, my podcast, is your fault, because I'd heard loads of people talking about podcasts. You should do a podcast, and I never knew what a podcast was. I didn't know what it was, and then you contacted me through Robert and said, you've got this podcast. And I was like, oh, what's this? So I went and did your podcast and loved it. It's basically just having a blather, isn't it? Having a chat.
It really is. I can't thank you enough. That was such a momentous moment when you said yes. I mean, in our house, it was such a big deal. It was like, oh my God. Because I was like, he's not going to come to our house and do a podcast. He's just not going to do it. And he was like, just ask him. And then, of course, you were like, yeah, totally. I'm coming up. I'll pop by. And you did, and we had such a lovely conversation. It's just moments like that, because that was quite early on in the Brawn and the Brave. That would have been 2019, eh?
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to think today, was it 18 or 19? Yeah, I think it was 19.
That's right, yeah, because I started the podcast in the January of 2019, so it was quite early on. And but I mean, 3 years on, I'm still amazed when people say yes to come on the podcast.
I'm like that. Yeah, I'm like that.
I'm like,
when you said yes, I was like, what, you want to come and have a chat with me?
No,
Right, okay.
No. When you asked me, I was like, well, I think you might have seen a post that I put on the other day there. I've been asked a couple of times, just a handful of times, to be on people's podcasts, and I'm always a bit like, eh? me. But then I'm like, remember that people do that to you, and it's nice to reciprocate, because my first instinct was to say no, because I've got nothing to say and I would be a very boring guest. Knowing all the amazing people you've spoken to on your podcast, I was like, why is he asking me? It must be a slow day. But I'm here for the blether.
But you've got a story to tell. Like, my podcast is essentially very similar to yours in that, although there's often a motorcycle theme to it, it's not just exclusively about bikes. It's about my slogan of, live your life. It's about people who have got a story to tell and what they've done, and everybody's got a story to tell, don't they? You find that when you chat 100%. To folk. I've said that before.
Like, I would literally, anybody could come on my podcast. There's not like a remit. You don't have to tick a box. Like, are you passionate about something? Mm-hmm. I'm happy to talk to you. It's a total honour.
Right. So, For people out there who aren't aware of the Braw and the Brave podcast, can you introduce it a little bit and tell us a wee bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
This is my elevator pitch, is it?
This is it. Go.
So, the Braw and the Brave is a podcast about people and their passions. You can see that I like alliteration. And it basically is a blether with people from all walks of life with a passion in their life, whether it be their career or whether it be their hobby or whether it be a kind of amalgamation of that. I've spoken to lots of different people, as I say, from all over, particularly Scotland, predominantly Scotland, but far and beyond Scotland, just through the joy that is the internet. Mm-hmm. And we speak about the stuff that they love to do and they make space for in their life.
So how did you fall into that then? How did you get in? Because 2019, at the start of 2019, it's still fairly early on in the podcast sort of tsunami, which hit round about lockdown, wasn't it? Like lockdown, totally. And everyone, me included, everybody started doing it. So how did you get into it initially?
I just, I love podcasts. So my job, I'm a choreographer and dance teacher, and I'm freelance and have been for a long time. I've been full-time freelance for about 11 years now. So commuting, all over Scotland to teach, and listening to music, you're just choreographing a dance in your head. So I had to start listening to something else other than music. So I started listening to podcasts as I was driving, and but like a lot of things in my life, they start as hobbies and then they become my job. And that's kind of how dance originated. It was a hobby, obviously, growing up. So I was looking for a hobby. And actually, the podcast wasn't a podcast. It was a blog to start with. The Braw and the Brave was a written blog.
Right.
I interviewed a few people that I'd worked with, friends of mine. So my first ever Braw and the Brave anything was my friend Deborah MacArthur, who is a theatre maker and director. We went to a cafe in Coatbridge. I had a wee dictaphone that I got from Argos. We had a lovely chat, and then I kind of typed it up as a magazine article and put it out as a blog. Uh-huh. And I did it like 5 or 6 times, maybe a couple more. But for me, as much as I love writing, and that's another world that I did before I went into full-time dance, I just was like agonising over every sentence, and I just felt as if I wasn't capturing the essence of the person and how they described their passion. So it was actually my mum. I've got my mum to thank for the podcast, because she said, why don't you listen to podcasts all the time? Why don't you just make the Braw and the Brave into a podcast? And I was like, cool, yes. I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, how do you do that? Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds technical. That doesn't really me. So my sister, I've got also her to thank for it. She was like, you need a laptop, you need some sort of like software to record on. And my mum and dad bought me this mic, which I'm still using for my Christmas in 2018. And the rest is history, as they say. It's now a podcast. It started in January 2019. And working in the arts, which I'm incredibly privileged to do, I meet hundreds of really interesting creative people. So yeah, if you work with me, you're probably going to be on the podcast.
So I mean, that was something I was going to work up to eventually, but go on in. So how do you select who you chat to? Is it just a case of you're interested, come on?
Pretty much. I mean, it's lovely now that people are asking to come on.
Yeah.
Which is smashing. I'm sure you get that as well. I'm like, my podcast? It still amazes me when people say that they listen. And mine's is small fry, like it's toty, like compared to your amazingness. Like mine's is, just, it is a hobby. I don't make money from the podcast. But it is always lovely when somebody says that they listen or they know about it. I was at a wedding the other week there, and one of the photographers came up and went, sorry, do you do the Brawn the Brave podcast? And I was like, I was like, you've actually just made my life. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. I mean, I have to say, a lot of people that have been on the podcast I've worked with, I've had the privilege of working with them. So it could be other choreographers, musical directors. I've had quite a varied career. So I worked full time for a dance company for a number of years, and that was in a really specific realm of Scottish dance. So I have a lot of people from that world that are still.
Is that all this stuff jumping over the swords and
over
stuff?
the swords? Yes, yeah. It was my remit to make Kaylee cool.
Right.
So I was dancer in residence for the area of Clackmannanshire, which is the least county in Scotland. So I was out and about doing a lot of Kaylee and Highland and basically trying to get kids and people to love that type of dance. So I met a lot of interesting people while I worked there. And then when I went freelance full time, lots of different projects. So I've just gathered all these really cool people who do great things. And the joy of the internet is that you get to keep up with these people on social media, and people are loyal. So if you do a good job, they quite often come back to you and say, oh, I've got this project. So you end up working with the same people, maybe not year in, year out, but I've been really, really lucky to meet a lot of really cool people. And then the joy of having the podcast is like you build up a bit of a repertoire, and then people get there's something to show. Here's the thing I made. And then people are like, oh, that looks all right. I could come on that, like yourself. Do you know what I mean? So like you totally took a chance on me because I had like done a handful of episodes. I'm like, you don't know me, but would you like to come on a podcast, please? Thank you so much.
But you like a chat, I like a chat. Match made in heaven, isn't it? No problems.
I'm done.
I can't remember how long we even chatted for. I can't remember. It was great fun. Really enjoyed it. Loved it.
That's kind. No, I loved it. I totally did. You know, like it still amazes me that I get to do this. And I've really, I've just had to fit it into my life. I mean, it has brought me other opportunities that I just didn't expect. But first and foremost, it's something for me. If nobody listens to it, I've still had a nice time chatting to the person. Like I'm not really thinking, and I don't pick people to answer your question. I don't pick people like, oh, they'll get me loads of followers. All that, I'm not interested. Like I'm really not. Like it's amazing. Like if you've got loads of followers and you've built that up, I think that's so cool. That's impressive. But I don't use anybody. I very much am just like, if you would like to come on. And I try and get a bit of a kind of plethora of passion. So I want a bit of dance in there, theatre, but I also want worlds that I know nothing about. It definitely had to be not a performing arts podcast for me. I wanted to just learn about things that I know very little about, including motorbikes.
They've generally got 2 wheels, sometimes 3, and they've got an engine. That's about all I know, really. Sometimes they make a noise, sometimes they don't. That's about it.
Totally.
The extent of my knowledge. I'm the same really with, particularly with guests for the podcast. I don't look at it along the lines of, oh, well, that'll get a lot of traction, that'll get a lot of views or downloads or things. I'm like, oh, they'd be interesting to talk to. I'd love to chat with them because, I've had people on here like somebody at the top of my head, Peter Hickman, right? He's a British superbike racer, just done the World Superbikes as a wild card. He races the TT. In fact, I think he's got the lap record for the TT. Not a chance our paths would ever really cross. Although, like I'm in the bike world, he's in the bike world, but they're 2 different sort of segments. And without the podcast, the chance of me walking up to Hickman in like the pits and saying hello and him knowing me and having a chat, it's not particularly high. Whereas the podcast, I dropped him a line. He was like, yeah, no problem. I'll come on and have a chat with you. So you get, an hour
but
to chat.
If you don't ask, you don't get. That's the thing. And I'm like, the worst somebody can say is no, thank you. And there'll be a reason. There'll be a legitimate reason. And it's not necessarily that they don't like what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people who I'm like, really, you're that worried or insecure about coming on my podcast? People will say, why are you asking me? I've got nothing to say. And I'm like, kidding on. Like, I know what you've done. I know what you've achieved. I know that you're passionate about something, but it always amazes me when people are like, are you sure you want to, like, are you sure? And I'm like, absolutely, 100%. So, I think if you don't ask, you don't get. And those sometimes when I'm feeling a wee bit gallus, I'll just send that message. I'm like, today's the day, send a message and then wait to see if they've seen it.
Do you know all the western, southwestern Scottish people that are listening are like, yes. Like for me, every time I say fit like the northeast, the Doric, I get loads of Doric folk going, oh, it's braw to hear that. It's brilliant to hear people saying that. Gallus just means like great, good, awesome. It's just what do they call it? A colloquialism. Is that what they call it?
Colloquialism, yeah, totally. Although, yeah, I'm all about the Scots words. All about the Scots words. Get them in there. Get using them.
You had a young lassie. She was on Twitter. I don't do Twitter anymore, but she was on Twitter, and she really was like trying to bring the Scots dialect back. Yes. What was her name? I forgot her name.
Len Penny.
Len Penny. Yeah, it was
Len's
brilliant.
Fantastic. Yeah, she's brilliant. She's an amazing poet. She's and just so articulate, and she's so knowledgeable about the Scots language, and just such a champion of it. Like, she's still doing great stuff. Like, I see, I'm not on Twitter. That I am on Twitter, but I'm not on it that often to post her in. But when I am, I always share what she's doing, because she's fab. She really is. You
started doing some poetry as well, haven't you?
Well, that's not a new thing, but I think it's just a new thing that I've started posting. Just a wee artistic expression, I guess. It wasn't meant to be anything. Basically, I've written poetry my whole life, I think, school and stuff. And somebody asked me this the other day, and I was like, I didn't realise how long I've been writing poetry, but I remember winning a competition at school and to go to the Civic Centre to get a certificate or whatever. So I guess I've been doing it a while, but it started like maybe as an adult a while ago. I started writing a poem at Hogmanay, just got a wee bit like nostalgic and a wee bit kind of like thinking about the year ahead and stuff. And it just became a wee bit of my own New Year's tradition to just on my phone. And then just more recently I thought, I'll just share some. So started sharing them just as, written form. And then I've recorded a few just like on stories and stuff. And like I was saying, with opportunities like that's just on the Brawn the Brave page. And last year I got invited to to write and perform a poem at TEDx Cumbernauld Women, which was like huge. Do you know what I mean? I was like, this is mental. And again, it's just a hobby, but I think I ask people to come on the podcast, and quite often they're really open and honest, and I think my poetry makes me the most honest and open that I can be. So I think it's important to then, if you ask other people to be open and honest, then you should maybe put that out in the world as well. So that's kind of where the poetry's at for me.
I find with podcasts, like, excuse the language, but there's no bullshit with podcasts. You can't hide behind anything. Like some of my podcasts have gone 3.5, almost 4 hours before, and especially when you start bringing that into the equation, and like some of the chaps that have been on here, there's an ex-squaddy that lives in Germany now, Sean. He does moto vlogging, same as me on YouTube, and he can drink. He can knock these beers back. So I got fairly lubricated chatting to him for like 3 hours or something. Yeah. And you can't. The truth comes out, doesn't it? You can't hide behind anything. Like, you come out when you have a conversation with somebody like this. You can't hide anything. It's not like a 5-10 minute chat on a radio station or something, is it? That's what I love about it.
Yeah, that long form conversation is really important, I think, because the immediacy of social media, we're kind of programmed to like just want an instant hit. These reels and stuff are like 30 seconds, and we're just used to getting that dopamine hit. And I think the art form of conversation and being able to just sit down with somebody and talk openly and get to know somebody. I mean, I'll start having a conversation with somebody either on the internet or in person who I've never met before, and by the end of it, I feel like I really know them. And of course I only know one side of them, and you can't fully know a person, but I've formed really lovely friendships with people through doing the podcast. And I think it is just taking that time to listen as well. Like, I mean, I know I'm doing a lot of blethering now, but I do think it's really important to listen, and I've learned the most by just being quiet and just taking in what someone else is saying.
Aye, totally. I found doing a podcast, it's really, I feel like it's aided me, like as a person, but also, as you said, in your sort of interpersonal skills. Although sometimes listening back to a couple of episodes when I'm editing, this sort of delay that you get on Zoom, like a lot of the time I'll think someone stopped, and you go to ask a question, and then they carry on talking. You're like, shit.
But I did that to you earlier on. I interrupted you, and then I was in my head, I was like, shush, Lisa. But I know exactly what you're talking about. It's difficult. And I'll say to a guest, if we're doing it online, I'll say, like, I'll probably nod a lot at you. It was really good advice I got from a guy, Graham, who runs Up Next Studios in Glasgow. He's done loads of filming for TV and film and stuff, and he's an amazing person. And he said to me, I was interviewing him, and he was like, I'll give you one tip. Someone had told him it. Just nod, don't do the constantly, which I find really difficult because I'm like, that's all I do. That's what I do. So hard. But he was like, don't do that because that's annoying. And he was like, also, when you think someone's finished, just wait because they'll probably give you absolute gold in that moment where it's a wee bit like uncomfy. And then they'll just want to fill the silence, so they'll say something and it might just be like total gold, and you're like, boom, like a podcast gold there.
Right, I've got to remember that. Because I like the awkward silence thing, I'm just like, there can't be any awkward silence. But you're right, sometimes that really does help, doesn't it? Right, I'm going to try that. I'll probably be quiet for like 30 minutes. Please say something. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I mean, I feel as if I say that sentence like this one time in a podcast, like I feel as if all I say is that I start saying stuff. So and so that was on my podcast, like people must be like, all right, we know you've got a podcast, but like you say, it's totally like enriched my life. Mm-hmm. I'm gutted that I didn't start it earlier. Do you know what I mean? And I've just met so many awesome people, and it's lovely to follow them on social media and know what they're up to, 3 years on. Because, some people I spoke to in 2019, we're now through a pandemic, and it's people have changed careers, people have moved away, people have had families, like they've done awesome things in that time. I'm still here in this cupboard doing a podcast, but everybody else is doing amazing. But it has afforded me like amazing opportunities, and I've learned loads, and I'm just really grateful for the what it's afforded me, and things are kind of moving on with the podcast now, so I'm getting more opportunities. Like I did 2 live in front of an audience episode. Well, actually, we didn't record them, so it was the Braw Brave in conversation with, but we didn't record the 2 of them, but that was an experience in itself, to have a live audience, particularly after a pandemic. It was amazing just to have people in a room. And I think I'm going to do another 3 this year, going into next year. So that's cool. Because, I mean, I'm a big fan of Stacey Dooley, the documentarian. And I went to see her before the pandemic, talking about her latest book, and they had footage of some of the documentaries she'd made. And I was like, that'd be cool, like to do the Braw Brave with an audience. So I guess thoughts become things, and it eventually kind of happens. So I think I'd like to do more of that, because it's in that thing, it's in person. You can't beat it.
Thoughts become things. I love that. That's really true though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's that thing my mum and dad say. That's
Here we go.
No, carry on. No, carry on. No. It's just a kind of mantra in our family.
Yeah. I love that. I had a chap called Lyndon Poskett on here, he's quite a famous biker. He's done like the Dakar rally a couple of times. He's a great guy, been around the world, done all sorts. And his thing is, when I had him on the podcast, he was like, the universe listens to you. He's like, he's not sitting there giving it bong bong, all this sort of stuff. He's like, the universe listens, and if you're negative, then you're just going to be surrounded by negativity. He said, you got to be positive. You got to put it out there so that you get accountable to people. I will do this. He says, you've got to think about these things, because you can't just put it out there if you've got no intention of doing it. So I'm going to do this, and you've got to be positive about everything. And he said, it'll happen. Just work at it and it'll happen. And he's right. He's totally right.
Well, what's the alternative to just be like, this is never going to happen, and I'm just going to wallow in that, and I guess, coming from a really privileged position, so I have, all my basic needs are met. I have a roof over my head, I'm safe. So it's gratitude for what you have and the opportunities, but also I think it is about trying to make your own opportunities. And I think I've just learned that through being freelance. When I got made redundant from the job that I had at the Dance Trust, they lost their funding, as a lot of places do in the arts at the time, and they had to close. And it was like, what am I doing now? I'd worked for them for 6 years. I'd be, I was freelancing in the evenings and stuff, but I was used to working for that dance company, knowing what I'm doing every day. And then it was like, what am I going to do now? And I just had to figure it out. And I decided to go freelance full time. And it was scary. And sometimes it still is, especially through a pandemic. But I think being freelance, you just have to make stuff happen. And, if you do a good job, like I said earlier on, people tend to be really kind and great and ask you back to do things, if you've done a good job. And so I think, just putting good stuff out in the world, trying to be positive, showing your gratitude for the good things that you've got in life. And and hopefully it all works out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a glass half full, glass half empty thing, isn't it? And we all know people on either side of that for sure. And I think I definitely used to be a half. Which one was it? The negative one. Is that half empty?
Half empty. Yeah. I can't imagine that you, Bruce.
I don't know. I like in my head, I've got that. I think in my old job in the old Bill, I think I got very, very insular, and I wasn't very keen to mix with anybody outside of my circle of friends and people that I worked with, because I think just in my old line of work, it's not like the TV. People don't come running up to you going, "Oh, thank God you're here." That just doesn't happen. They come running up to you shouting and screaming, or they're trying to stab you, they're trying to shoot you. There's all sorts going on. It's generally horrible when you get called to something. It's just, you become very defensive, I think. Well, you do. Everybody I know is like that. You do become like that. And you become very skeptical and you don't believe anybody. And then for me, to get out of that world and go traveling, so it's totally the opposite of that world, where you have to be very open. You have to rely on total strangers. You've got to trust total strangers. And it just totally changed my outlook on life. It was the best thing I ever did. And I feel like it really changed me as a person. But like, my wife doesn't think that. She was like, "No, you seem, to me, you just seem the same. But inside, I feel totally different." I guess
maybe you become a chameleon in the environment that you're in. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of mold yourself to fit at points in your life, and we grow as well, and we change and we evolve, I guess. But you've obviously always been the kind of person that has the capacity to trust and be open. And like, because some of the stories you told me that, when you were at my house and you were talking about your traveling and, you were saying like, I just pulled up in this petrol station. Somebody was like, "Where are you sleeping?" You were like, "I'm sleeping in this tent." And they were like, no, you have to follow me. And you were like, "I just followed them." And I'm like, "What? That's mental." Like, cause as much as I'm a trusting person, like, my mum and dad will definitely say that they brought us up to, like, my dad's favourite phrase is "trust nobody." And my dad's such like a warm, open person. But, when it comes to these two girls, it's like, trust nobody kind of thing. Yeah. So when you were telling me all that, I was like, oh, my mum and dad would have a fit if I was like following somebody.
my dad, if my dad ever hears any stories from the world trip, he still just sits there looking at me like, "You're a dafty. What you did what? Why did you?" Exactly what you just said. But and if I hear now, I'm back into my old almost way of life. When I hear other people, like youngsters that have come on the podcast and they've just got back from traveling, or people that have just come back from traveling, and they tell these stories, part of my head is like, "Oh, danger," But then I know exactly what it's like on the road. It's great. People are great. People are great. And occasionally they're not, and they're the ones that make the news, sadly. But most people are great. Definitely.
100%.
Time for a quick shout out to this week's sponsors, who are Innov. Now, Innov specialise in motorcycle dashcam systems. You'll probably seen the vids on my channel. They've got the single camera, the C5. They've got dual camera, which are the K series, the K3 and the K5. K3's 1080, K5's 4K front, 1080 rear. Both the K3 and K5 have an external mic, which you can even wire up into your helmet and vlog with if you want. If you look at my California Superbike School Day vids, the onboard audio is all via the Innov K5 system. They've also got GPS tracking. They've got an external remote so you can lock footage as you go. They'll do that automatically anyway, should they detect any sudden movement. They've got parking modes on them, so when that's activated, even when your bike is left unattended and switched off, say you're a bike calf or park it up in a town or something like that, if the bike moves at all, then it'll automatically kick in and it'll start recording. So hopefully you'll get that car that hits your bike or anyone that does anything to your bike. As long as they're in front of those cameras, you'll capture them. Great system, folks. Invaluable in terms of any accidents for insurance, because the first thing your insurance is going to ask is there CCTV or witnesses? And if you have one of these in-off systems fitted, then you're covered. Providing you're in the right, you're totally covered. Well worth getting, folks. Head to the link down below. I've got the in-off UK website link down below. So if you're listening to the show notes, check that out. If you're watching the vid, have a look in the description. It is a referral link that just lets in-off know you've come from me, which helps me massively in terms of the sponsorship. It shows them they're getting bang for their buck. If you use the code TEAPOT, TEAPOT, then you'll get, I think it's 5% off any of the in-off cameras. And if you use the link to the TeapotOne website, they're the one that do like the DC1 and XV1 helmet cameras. If you use the code TEAPOT, you'll get 5% off them as well. So a huge thank you to Innov for all their support. We are also sponsored by Ultimate Add-ons. Ultimate Add-ons, they specialize in mobile phone and action camera mounting solutions for bikes, for push bikes, that sort of stuff. They provide dustproof, drop-proof, really rugged cases for your phones, as well as a multitude of different mounting solutions for those phone cases and action cameras. Things like GoPros, DJIs, all that sort of stuff, Insta360s. Great bits of kit, They're great bits of kit, folks. Even when your phone is inside one of these cases, you can still use the phone, you can still use the cameras, obviously as long as you keep the lens and everything clean. Great things, folks. I have never had any issues with vibration affecting my phone's camera when I use the Ultimate Add-on systems. I use the Helix strap mount. It's basically like a ratchet strap, really easy to fit. I can fit it to almost any bike I've ever taken out for a review. Great bits of kit. If you head to ultimateaddons.com and if you use the code TeapotOne10, so TeapotOne with the number 10 at the end, then you will get 10% off their range. Massive thanks to Ultimate Add-ons. So let's rewind a wee bit then.
Okay.
The arts. How did you get into the arts then? How did that all happen?
Dancing. When I was wee, I went to a local dance school. I idolised my dance teacher. I still think she's just the most amazing person. I don't even think she teaches dance anymore. It's funny, like I totally equate her, totally random thing, but I have to tell you, I equate her with Shania Twain. Like right. She kind of looks like Shania Twain. That glamorous, just effortless talent, that she's Shania Twain in my head, because that new documentary that's on Netflix, I was you need to watch it. The Shania Twain documentary, it's very good. Highly recommend.
Well, I might have to have a little look at that then. You
might have to. Well, so my dance teacher and Shania Twain are one and the same person in my head. So yeah, just loved my dance teacher, loved dancing, seemed to have a kind of natural ability for it, but didn't think it was something I could do professionally. Didn't really just think about it really. Always singing, always dancing, played guitar. My dad plays guitar, so lots of music in our house. And then went to uni to do an English degree, but started dancing professionally. So I was a pro cheerleader for 4 years with the Scottish Rockettes. So we danced for the Rocks basketball team, as well as other we did some rugby and stuff at Murrayfield and Hampden, and had loads of amazing opportunities. So I went to two pro dance conventions, one in LA and one in Miami, which is basically where all the NBA, NFL squads go to learn all the routines for the year. So there was me sandwiched in a dance class with a Miami Dolphin cheerleader and a Laker girl next to me.
Sounds like hell, Lisa. Sounds like hell.
At the time it felt like it, because I was like, how did I get here? This lassie for Bell Hill. But it was amazing because, you just up your game and I learned so much in those experiences. So yeah, performing all over, awesome experiences, meeting loads of new people, and just the career kind of expanded from there kind of thing, and just decided to pursue it further. And and then went, not actually that long, went into choreography, which obviously not all dancers want to do. But for me, I'm quite happy to, I mean, I love performing and still have been performing up until the pandemic, but I love coming up with concepts for choreography and seeing other people thrive, and and I love teaching, so I teach young people right up to people in their 80s at times. I don't have my own dance school or anything. It's not something that I wanted to pursue. I did kind of tap into it when I was younger, but I tend to work mostly in theatre and community kind of projects and stuff in schools as well. I've done a lot of education projects. So yeah, I've been dancing my whole adult life kind of professionally and teaching since I was about 19, I think.
So, I mean, what happened during COVID and that then, through the pandemic with lockdown? Everything just stopped? Everything?
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, and I wasn't keen to teach online, and I didn't have a ready-made dance class audience kind of thing. My thing is projects based, so I'll come in and do a show and then I'll be like, bye, so there wasn't an audience there for me to teach online, and it just wasn't something that I was kind of keen to do. Not that there was loads of opportunities for that anyway, but I thrived in the sense that people again are so kind, and I did lots of different kind of jobs. So I did some assistant stuff like for arts projects online. I actually taught some podcasting workshops for young people and adults, which was so cool. Again, I did that thing where I was like, I don't know anything about that. I'm not an expert, but I'm not a guru. And they were like, you don't need to be, like, you've made a podcast, you kind of know stuff. And I was like, fair enough. So yeah, some young people who'd been part of a kind of theatre programme, they made a really cool podcast episode just talking about their experiences and how they'd come together and how they'd adapted in the pandemic, and that was really cool. So I got loads of kind of great opportunities that I didn't expect, but it was tough because I wasn't working as much, nowhere near as much as I would have been in real life. I did a hand washing choreography for the NHS, which was really cool. So there was lots of, this is how you wash your hands in a very interesting way, which was an amazing project. I was like, who knew I was going to be doing this? So we had some young people learning how to wash their hands correctly. But yeah, it was tough, but I'm not going to complain because I was in a much comfier position than a lot of people in my kind of world, my peers and stuff. So I will not complain. It was tough, I think, just like for everybody mentally. Someone who's used to working a lot. I like being busy. I don't really, money's not my thing. Like the MD knows me. I'm like, don't like talking about money. I just like my job, and it was just really tough not to do my job, and not to work with my pals. I've got a dance troupe, the Kennedy Cupcakes. We rehearsed every week for 11 years, every Thursday up to that point, and I wasn't seeing the girls every week, and so it was tough. But yeah, I didn't have it difficult compared to excuse me, a lot of other people. So, but yeah, I'm glad to be back in rooms with actual humans now.
Now, this is topical. and I appreciate people have been affected horrifically by lockdown and a pandemic, and my heart goes out to anybody that has been. But for a lot of people, it's not brought positives, but it's made them sort of retrospectively look at their life. And I'm one. My wife definitely feels like this. Just about everybody we know has said the same thing. It's sort of made people reevaluate where they were in life, particularly with work. There's a lot of people who were either doing a job and suddenly realised, what, that job did nothing for me, really. And I've survived for 2 years doing another job. Okay, it opens up. Or people who were commuting, certainly into London, and now they're 1 day, 2 days a week. They only need to be in. The rest of the time they can work from home. And it's like people are sort of finding their feet with a new balance in their life.
Of course.
Have you found that yourself? Or now is it a case of straight back, now it's all open, let's get back and get crack at it?
Aye, a wee bit. I mean, just leading up to last week. So I was on holiday last week, which was lovely. I got to go abroad, and I hadn't been on holiday since 2019. So it was nice to, because I kind of have to be physically removed from the place to not work. You know, I'm one of these people like checking the emails, and you know, if I was basically to take a week off here, I'd still be like making stuff up in my head, and you know, and sometimes obviously like editing the podcast, although it's not a job, like it's just more working and not just chilling. So it was lovely to go abroad, but I think up until that point I've had a really like busy year so far, and it was starting to look like it used to, where it was like non-stop and here, there and everywhere, and like, oh, I need to run here, and like Tupperware, hundreds of bottles of water in my car and Tupperware dishes, and like feeling like I was living out my car. And I mean, I think if I was honest, like I do thrive on that. I find it difficult to not be busy.
Aye.
I like a project. So, you know, if I was off, I'd just be decorating or crafting or something, writing a song. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, I find it difficult just to sit at peace. But I think, like, to answer your question, yeah, it does make you, I think it's just that gratitude thing, like, just because sometimes you can get so busy, you're like, I'm so busy, and you're like, don't you complain? Because I was like, I'll never complain about me being busy again. So I think it's that gratitude of like when the work did come in and I was allowed to be with other humans and make art and, you know, and have a nice time and people learn stuff and I'm learning from other people. Like, I was like, oh, this is like, I will never take this for granted again, because it felt like it was never going to come back at one point. I went to see a production at the King's Theatre yesterday of Footloose, and it was just pure joy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just a fun musical and the audience were loving it. Some people not behaving in a theatre though, but anyway, we'll sideswipe that. It's like, stop talking.
Oh, so annoying.
So annoying. But everybody was loving it and the cast were loving it, because at one point we were like, they're never going to leave the stage. And we're just like, one more song. Like, and I was, and Darren Day, the performer, you remember Darren Day? He was in it, and he at the end he actually said like, this is amazing to stand here and see all of you, and you know, not people not having to wear masks, you know, if they don't want to. It was like, it's just lovely to be able to look out to an audience, and I'm like, yeah, it's nice to be an audience for sure.
Absolutely. My wife and I went and saw when it all opened up again. Oh, in fact, I think it was when it opened up and then it shut down again. So it's one of the times when it was opened up after a long period of everything being shut. We managed to get some tickets for Hamilton. You know the show? Oh, it's fantastic. It's amazing.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm going, so it's my 40th in about 4 weeks. So I'm going down the weekend of like the first weekend in September, and we're going to see it. And did you know that the new Hamilton is Scottish?
No.
The guy that's playing Hamilton, he's just moved into the role. He's just literally moved into the role. So he's a Scot. So I'm hoping, I'm going to try and get him on the podcast. But yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
I'm chuffed that you liked it, because I mean, I'm a big fan. Like, I've not seen it in person. I've seen it online, and but I'm dead excited. I'm a total ignoramus. I knew nothing. Total Luddite. I knew nothing about Hamilton, but I'd seen all the blurb about it. You know, my wife's right into the theatre, and she was like, I'd really love to go and see it. Would you come? And I'm like, yeah, of course I will. Just everyone keeps going on about it. Yeah, I'll go. I like the odd show. So I went to see it, and because I didn't know anything about it, I didn't know what to expect. For starters, it's pretty much all sort of God, what's the correct term? Like visibly ethnic. It's all pretty much non-white cast, isn't it? Yeah. Which in itself in the theatre was a bit, oh wow, what's this all about? And then they started rapping, and there's a mixture of like the modern music with the historical side of it, and it was like, I felt like I really got into it, like following the whole, trying to listen to the songs and follow along with the plot and see what was going on. But you could tell the whole point that brought me to that was that the cast on the stage, you could see that they were just so chuffed and happy to be back and performing. And there's obviously, you know what the theatre's like, there's always people that, like theatre groupies, there's people that go all the time, don't they? Yes.
And they almost know all the cast by name.
Yes.
And everybody just seems so happy to be back in the theatre, and it was just a great vibe. It was lovely, really, really good.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. That's brilliant. Yeah. No, I'm super excited for it. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing, for me, nothing beats like live entertainment. You know, even when I was on holiday there was you know, remember the band, the Gypsy Kings?
Yeah.
There was a kind of tribute type band, all Spanish guys, and, you know, all playing instruments. The voices were amazing. I was like, I've missed like just gigs, like going to see live music, you know. And I've been totally embracing, because I think working in the arts you quite often see the stuff you're working on, but I rarely go to see other stuff. I'm just like, oh, I'm too busy. But now I'm like, I'm going to see like the opening of an envelope. I'm there. So, and I'm very lucky to know some really talented people who are in things. So I'm like, I'm coming to see it. So I'm going to the Fringe on Wednesday to see some stuff. And I'm going to go through again with my mum, because we need to support like live theatre, else it just won't exist. Like, you need to go and be there, bums on seats.
And it's almost like I certainly, I don't think I appreciated what the arts actually do for everybody, really. To me, it was like, I didn't consider myself much of an arty type person. I go to the odd show, but, you get arty people and, that's that. They do their thing. I didn't really think it had much of an effect on me, but you can see it really does, because when the world shuts down and you don't have all that stuff going on, it just feels like
you look for.
It's an empty place, isn't it? It's like, you all of a sudden realise what you miss.
Yeah,
that's normally going on.
TV, film, music, it's all art. Do you know what I mean? That's the first thing we were gravitating towards, like Netflix. When it was the pandemic, everybody was like, on online concerts and stuff. Yeah, and art is for everybody, and everyone has the capacity to be artistic and creative. I mean, I meet a lot of people working in community, theatre and community arts. I meet a lot of people like, oh, I'm not into the dancing, hen. I don't do the dancing, and I'm all right, okay, like, we'll just have a go. Like, we'll just have a go. Like, it's just moving. Sometimes, even in school, sometimes I'll say, so we're going to learn a dance today, and some of the kids will go, oh, and I'm like, it's not really a dance. It's not actually. It's just moving. It's I'm like, do you play football? And they're like, aye, and I'm like, it's just like that. Like, it's just moving your legs. So you've just got to like slightly sell it differently. But I genuinely do believe that everybody's got a capacity to be creative and artistic, and it's just, I'm dead lucky that I've been afforded the opportunity to do it, and my parents and my family have been super supportive, and they're like, all my harebrained ideas, all the stuff that I've come up with and made, and people have just been like, aye, go for it, do it, try it. Some people don't get that cheerleader, so I'm very aware that if I can be somebody else's cheerleader, I'm there 100%. Many people have said to me like about starting a podcast. I'm like, do it, make a podcast. Like, I'll do a Zoom with you, like a wee half hour. I'll let you know how I do it. We'll figure it out. I'm like, just make something, because you'll be so proud. You'll have a lovely time doing it. Doesn't matter if anybody else sees it, or as long as you enjoy doing it. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's just having the time to tap into that. And I know obviously going to the theatre is an expensive hobby, and not everybody's able to do that. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's why like community theatre and community arts are dead important. Like, we need to support them as well, because that's your gateway into it.
Aye, and it's also sometimes it's the only contact people get with other people is to go along to their local theatre or whatever it is, a coffee mart, anything. Some people just don't have. They don't have a circle of friends, do they? They don't have family. They don't socialise. So it's, I've seen people, maybe not so much. My dad's a bit of a loner. I've got to say, my dad is a bit of a loner. And I think if we moved him back up to be in the same village as my brother. So he used to live down in the south coast of England. Okay. And we moved him back up there because we were like, he's 81 now. And it's like, if you don't push him, he would never socialise with people. He wouldn't go and meet anybody. And he'd say himself, I'm perfectly happy. I'm perfectly happy. Don't worry about me. But he can't be, but he would never say that he was unhappy, but he must have been, because now he's up there like 3 minutes round the corner from my brother's house, so my brother can go and sit. They don't flood him by any stretch of imagination, but once or twice a week he'll pop round. He'll have a Sunday dinner with my brother and his family, and there's other friends of their family that he's now, like older people who he's now friends with. So he started to socialise a little bit, and you can see he's underneath the sort of scowl. He's quite happy now. You can see that.
Well, it's nice to have the option, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like you say, it's not being in somebody's pocket, but it's just nice to have the option. I mean, I'm not great on my own. Like, I do like company. Like, although I think during the pandemic, I just had to learn to like be all right with my own company and just sit still for a while. But and I think it is important to obviously be comfortable in your own company and your own skin and just your own thoughts. But yeah, for my opinion, like, I just thrive on interactions with other people whether it be friends or strangers kind of thing. And I think with my job as well, I have to be the most confident person in the room a lot of the time, even when I'm not. You know, you walk into a room and you're like, lots of people here are like, they maybe didn't choose to be there, you know, or they didn't choose this activity for whatever reason. They might be there because they were wanting to sing, but now they're being asked to dance and act at the same time. Or, you know, it's young people and they're like, that we were just told to be here. So I have to be the person that G's you up, that makes you feel that you can do this.
Yes.
And I don't know MD, and this is a new space. I've never been in this room before, and I don't know MD, but I've got to be that person. But I've just seen the joy of interactions and what they can bring. I mean, I'm part of a choreographer for an amateur club in Airdrie and Coatbridge. They put on productions every year, like full-scale productions, like proper professional production size. And I started with them really early on in my kind of choreography career, and they're like a family. Yeah. You know, these people come along, teachers, police officers, people that work in coffee shops, all walks of life, all ages, and it's like a proper family to them, and they put on productions together. And for that couple of hours, the rest of the world goes away, and they're in Annie Get Your Gun or Rock of Ages or whatever show we're doing. Do you know what I mean? And they become somebody else, and they have loads of fun, and they can play. I think adults don't play enough. Like, we need to, I've just not stopped playing at shops. Like, I started playing at shops when I was wee, and I've just not stopped.
Me again, folks. Just another shout out for this week's sponsors, who are the Influencer Store. The Influencer Store helps you build your brand big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design, and there are no hidden costs. For more info, come check us out at theinfluencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. And now, if you've got any of my merch over at TeapotOne.com, all of that is handed by Roger and Charlotte over at the Influencer Store. It's really good quality. It's British made. That's why I've gone with them. So a huge thanks to the Influencer Store. Lastly, folks, this is just one from me. It's a massive shout out to each and every one of you who's listened to the podcast, each and every one of you that watches the vids, both here and across on the main TeapotOne channel. Thank you very much for all your support. Thank you very much for engaging in the comments, liking and sharing the social media stuff, liking and sharing the vids. Sharing vids is a huge thing. Really is. You've got no idea how much that helps. You bump you up in the algorithm. So if you enjoy what you watch, what you listen to, share it amongst all your mates. And thank you very much. For all those of you over in the clan on Patreon, not much I can say except, a heartfelt thank you. You folks go that extra mile, and I really do appreciate it. I couldn't do this without your support. If you fancy checking that out, head to patreon.com/TeapotOne. Okay then. Let's get back to the chat.
Play at shops.
play at shop. I think you're totally right there. I caught on something that you said right at the start about how you need company, or you need to be active. You need stuff going on round about you. And I was thinking to myself, do you know, I like that, but I think I've got a bit of my dad in me, and that I'm perfectly happy to just be. But obviously, I did my trip solo, and so I'm perfectly happy in my own space. And sometimes my wife will tell you, I'm just like, just leave me. I just want to be on my own for a bit.
That's healthy. I wasn't saying that I was the right way to do things. That sounds really healthy. I think you've got it down to a T.
Well, the thing is, like in my day-to-day working life, this is my world most of the time. This little office here, and I'm generally, the lights aren't on, so I'm in the dark and I'm sat and I'm editing 12, 15 hours a day. Just boom, edit away. But then I have the flip side of that, where, through my community that follow Teapot, I can go and meet people, and we can go away and, for weekends away, I'll do a ride out and meet somebody for a cup of tea somewhere and have a chat. So you get the whole social side of it. So it's almost like I get the best of both worlds, really.
But you've curated that. It's amazing what you've literally made that happen. That's, you had this other world that you're a part of, this other career, and you've went after something that you're passionate about, and you've made that your life. And it's so inspiring. It's amazing what you've been able to achieve.
You've done exactly the same. You're doing exactly the same with your life, aren't you?
Just playing at shops, Bruce. Just playing at shops.
Just playing at shops. But, you know, like, I get people, I do have people saying, oh, well, we can't all do it, something that we love. And I don't say it to people, but I should turn around to them and go, well, why don't you? You know, it's not easy, is it? It's not easy to do what you want to do. You have to make a conscious decision to go for it, identify what it is that you want, make a plan, how you can attain that, and then work at it. Just keep going. Because if you don't, you're never going to get it.
But it's like anything else. There's like sacrifices. Do you know what I mean? There's stuff that you decide isn't as important because that's your goal, and that's a choice that you make. You know, you know, I have friends who are totally not in the arts, are not self-employed, and they very much like, you know, appreciate what I do. But you know, I've heard people say to me like, "Oh, I couldn't do what you do. I couldn't not know what I'm doing from week to week or month to month." And I'm like, I actually can't now imagine working for a company full time. Although I work for lots of amazing companies, you know, I'm dead lucky, and I have a part-time position with an amazing organisation, Creative Entrepreneurs Club, who do amazing things for entrepreneurs. But I just like the freedom of being freelance, and not that I think I would get bored as such, but I think it's just because you're coming up with new ideas all the time, and just and a lot, you know, I do collate people. I kind of bring them with me, and if I can pass on work to people, so just to keep those connections going. You know, I'm like, I'll just be your pal. Like, I'll still be here once a job's finished. I'm not good at things ending. That's the only thing. Like, I've not been, since I was a kid, Mum said, oh, you used to really get upset when things finished.
You don't like goodbyes?
No, like, see family weddings and all that, I used to cry and all that and get really upset. Like, dancing shows, every dancing show every year, I was like distraught. Mum's like, you'll have another show next year. Like, you're going back to dancing next week. I don't like things ending. I'm not great at that.
You've built a really nice little network up, haven't you? Because you do these periodical sort of meetups on Zoom with lots of different people that have been on your podcast. I've done one or two of them, and it's a fantastic networking tool, isn't it? Because as you said, you meet people from lots of different sectors in life, both in a business sense and in a social sense. It's a really nice little sort of, I'm going to say, I'll be corny, nice little family that you're growing up there.
No, that's not corny, and thank you for saying that. I will admit I haven't done them this year, so that was something that I was doing. I'd kind of started during the pandemic. Again, I just kept talking to people, you know, and I felt like I was being quite like selfish by keeping them to myself, because I was like, I just spoke to Bruce Smart. He's amazing. You should totally know this bit. How do you not know this bit? Do you know what I mean? So I felt as if, or people on the podcast did know each other. I'm like, oh, you know so-and-so because you worked on that, or blah, blah, you know, and not all arts related, do you know what I mean? But people would know each other, and I'm like, you should meet so-and-so. So it kind of came out of like the pandemic, obviously. And also just that I think you should all meet. And I mean, the dream is to actually have a Braw Brave meet up in real life. You know, I can see it now. Like, I've got the room, there's like live music from all the amazing musicians that I've had. Like, that's the dream. I'd love to run like a Braw Brave event kind of thing and have live talks and stuff.
A festival?
Aye, a Braw Brave festival.
There you go.
Then you would get a badge saying I'm a Braw bag.
Braw bag.
Planned it all.
Brilliant.
It's in the planning. But yeah, again, I think just it kind of dwindled a wee bit in terms of numbers, although it was never about how many people came. I mean, sometimes it was just a couple of times it was just me and a lovely man, Alistair Hutton, who was the voice of the Edinburgh tattoo. Yes. He was on the one I did, I think, or at least one of the ones I've done, yeah. Alistair is just an absolute dream, and he is a man that has done many incredible things in his life. Iconic voice. I mean, he's just, I'm like, he could just say anything. Yeah. He's written children's books, he's travelled the world, he was a paratrooper, like he's done amazing things, and he's the kindest person. He's lovely, but sometimes it was just me and Alistair, and it was lovely. So it was never about how many people I could get in the Zoom room, but I think just because the pandemic obviously was wavering and people were going back to work and people were sick of being online, you know, they just weren't turning up as often kind of thing month to month, and then I just got busy with work. So but it is something recently that I thought, it'd be nice to do just a one-off and see who would pop in kind of thing. Aye, because you just say it's nice to catch up with people and see what they're up to, because you only get the highlights reel, obviously, on social media kind of thing.
This is it. You only get the best bits normally, don't you?
So I would like to do a kind of in-person thing. I did kind of hope that I would kind of be able to manage it this year, but maybe next year. It's one for next year.
Right, I've just seen the time. That's nearly an hour we've been blethering for.
I know, I'm a blether.
We've got a couple of questions over on Patreon. Have you got time to?
Of course
to do
I do.
a couple
Yeah,
questions?
absolutely.
Right,
I'm just opening this door because it's like hotter than the sun in here.
Oh, this office gets so hot. I know. When
My laptop's going to overheat.
Well, do you remember when it was it hit 40 degrees down here, or 41 it hit down here? I did a podcast that night and I had to have the window open, and I've got a little fan on there as well, which is normally really quiet so you don't get the hum.
Yes.
I had that blaring with the lights on as well, with these studio lights. I think it said something like 48 on the thermometer. It was insane. My camera gave up halfway through. The GoPro just overheated, and I had to use like the crappy desk webcam thing that I had.
Malfunctioning. Jesus, see these great lengths you go to do a podcast, I tell you.
Suffer for our art.
Suffer for that.
Right, we'll pop across to the clan over on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, Lee Vigor. How you doing, Lee? Hope you're both well. A question for both. Who's the best guest you have ever had and why? Oh, I don't pre-read these questions, I swear. It's up to you if you want to answer that or not. It's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one. I think a lot of people have asked me that over the years, over the last 3 years. Everybody has brought something totally unique and something that has always surprised me, even when I thought, I know how this is going to go. Nah, every time. Including yourself, but I guess one that stands out, so I'll turn it on. I'm being a bit like doing that thing that they do in the telly, like squirming around the question. So I genuinely don't have a favourite, but one that sticks out because other people have said that was great was the one that I did with my dad.
Oh, wow.
Because that was, well, first of all, I don't think he was really up for it, but because he's my dad, he said yes. And then I could just see like the dread. But 5 minutes into it, he was quite relaxed. He really enjoyed it. We had a lovely chat. I've had loads of nice feedback about it. And when we stopped recording, it was maybe only about, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes. And he was like, is that it? He was quite happy to blather on. Yeah. So a lot of people have said, I really enjoyed that one with your dad. And I'm glad we did it. I'm really chuffed that we managed to do it. So yeah, I'll say the one with my dad.
Do you know, I did a podcast with my wife.
And I need to listen. I need to listen to that one.
It was her idea. It was just coming up. I think it was in between Christmas and New Year. And I didn't have anyone lined up because I was just going to take a break over Christmas, New Year with a podcast. And she was like, who's on your podcast this week? I said, nobody, I'm taking a break. And she said, why don't I come on it? And I was like, because she's quite private about like her own life, really, with people she doesn't know. So I was like, really, you'd come on? So she came on, and it was great. We had a great time because people, like my format, people can leave questions, and obviously people get a bit brave in questions, don't they? So and they like to watch you squirm. So some of the questions were quite probing, and it was nice to sit there. I learned things about my wife that I didn't really know, to be honest. So it was like couples therapy.
Yes. Good on it. That's brilliant. I'll need to listen to that one. I'll let you dig back through for that one.
I can't remember. I think it was it last Christmas or maybe the Christmas before? I can't remember which one it was. But yeah, it's cool. There. It's there for you to see.
Oh, that's nice.
Nice one, Lee. Cheers for that.
Yes, that was a good question.
I enjoy podcasts where I don't think I've had a guest yet where I felt like I was swimming through treacle trying to have a conversation. It always tends to flow really, really well, which is nice. Yeah. And having questions really does help. But it also helps that you are a good person who is a great conversationalist, Bruce. So, don't do yourself a disservice, do you know what I mean? You've made me feel very at ease. I mean, I know I could probably talk in an empty room, but you've asked the right questions and you've made me feel welcome, do you know what I mean? And that is a skill that you need to develop, do you know what I mean, when you're doing the podcast, because it is different than to a point in a real life conversation, because you obviously have the things that you want to talk about and you want to make the person feel comfortable before they maybe expose more about themselves than just the
kind of facade that we put out for everybody. Do you know what I mean? So I think it is a bit of a skill that you know that you've obviously got in abundance. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I wing it a lot of the time. I really do just wing it. Do you plan like a question list or like a plan, not a plan of attack, but what's the word? Like some sort of direction for it, or do you just go, here's this person coming on, let's go?
Pretty much. I mean, a bullet point on my phone,
Mm-hmm.
I never look at it. It's there as a total safety net, just in case I had a wee malfunction moment where my brain was just like blank and the person was totally silent. It's never happened yet. I don't look at that, but I think it's just a wee ritual that I do beforehand, and it's literally one word bullet point. Do you know what I mean? Like career, highlights. Do you know what I mean? Just stuff that I'm like, that'd be cool. I want to know that. It's not what I think other people might want to know or what's like a probing question or none of that. But very much just, I think it's just that listening. It's just listening to what they're saying and responding.
Aye.
You know, so the conversation flows because I've heard what they said and I'm like, oh, right, wait a minute. Tell me more about that. I didn't think you were going to say that. Or that made me think. And sometimes I worry that I give too much of my kind of input. So I'm like, oh, this one time, and I'm like, nobody's bothered about you, Lisa. But then I don't feel like it would be as much of a natural conversation if I didn't do that and it was just all about the person and I was just asking the questions. So it's a wee bit of a fine line. Like sometimes when I edit, I'm like, why are you talking?
Aye, I've had that. It's been a long time since they've said anything. It's just me blabbing. You're like, oh, bugger.
But it is about making the other person feel comfortable. And if that makes them feel that they're just in a natural conversation, I think that's important.
Aye, yeah, definitely. Because it's not an interview, is it? It's just a conversation. That's the thing.
Totally.
Yeah, it's not a chat show format.
No, and I was like hoping that I would come on here and like you would tell me stuff about you, and you have. Do you know what I mean? Like you're talking about your dad and stuff like that. That's a conversation.
Yeah.
You've not grilled me, which I'm glad about.
I will put the light on.
Totally, I'm not good under pressure.
Old habits die hard.
I don't know anything.
Where were you on Thursday evening? Yeah.
Oh, you would. Yeah, my memory's terrible. You'd the rubbish of that game.
That game. What was it? Oh yeah, you said you listen to a lot of podcasts. What sort of podcasts do you listen to then?
Good question. I mean, I don't listen to as many as I would like. I think I listened to loads when I was commuting, loads. Although I've started to get back into them in the last kind of year and a bit since I've been out working more. A lot of kind of like self-improvement, self-help kind of ones. Like I like Fern Cotton's Happy Place. Because she speaks to lots of different kind of people. I like Putting It Together, which is a Scottish theatre podcast by a guy, Brian O'Sullivan, who's been on the Brawn and the Brave. He's amazing, Brian. He's also called Bridal Hangway, if some people follow him. He does kind of like skits about this woman, Janice, who's a GP receptionist. Right. You'd love her. I'm going to say, I'm saying you'd love her. Janice is the character. And Frank, the husband, and then Connor, the son. I'm going to send you the link. Bridal Hangway. He's amazing. Brian is an actor and musician, but he also has a Scottish podcast called Putting It Together. And he interviews people who work in theatre. It's really, but it's dead interesting. You don't have to be into theatre or a theatre buff to like it. You know, he's so many interesting people. Yeah, so again, it's a bit like the Brawn and the Brave. I just like listening to folk talk about themselves.
Aye, there's some cracking ones out there, isn't there? Like I tend to listen to a lot of American ones. Really, they were the first ones. Like Joe Rogan's, obviously. I think after you, I think Joe Rogan was probably the first one I listened to. Just because people are like, oh, podcast, you got to listen to Joe Rogan, and then from that, I've listened to is it Two Bears?
Oh, right. Okay, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's oh God, what's the name? Jeez, I forgot. I listened to this.
I know. I was just literally when you were talking there. I thought I'm just going to quickly go into my playlist. Sometimes I just hit and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm listening to.
So Two Bears, One Cave. That's one I listen to.
Cool,
That's brilliant. It's funny. It's just a couple of comedians chasing a racing. That's a motorcycle based one. I've had them on, Chrissy Rouse and Dom Herbertson. I've had them on my podcast, and I like their stuff. They're doing really well. Their podcast is
cool.
Literally in the last year or so, it's just flown. I think they get like 500,000 downloads a month. Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's mad.
Yeah, I know.
I know there's loads. I mean, there's some cracking podcasts like in Scotland. There's some people doing some seriously great stuff. A girl I know, Heather, she started a podcast during the pandemic. It's called Women Who Fail, and she gets women to come on and talk about their failures, which I'm always just like, that's amazing. These people are like heroes coming on and talking about the things that they think they deem to be failures. Of course, like in my eyes, you know, and anybody listening would be like, that's not a failure. You're an amazing person. But so yeah, I find it just dead inspiring to listen to people and just being open and honest about what, you know, their lives and or what they're up to. Also like How to Fail by Elizabeth Day. She's an author, and she's some cracking guests on talking about their failures. Have
you heard of the High Performance podcast? You heard that one? That is really good. British one. Yes. And it's really good. It's like I need to
get back into more podcasts.
Excuse me, I'll have a quick look at, just so I get the names right. Sorry, it is. Where are we? Jake Humphrey. So he's BT Sports. He's a BT Sport anchor and BBC lead presenter, and Damien Hughes. They're really good. They get all sorts of like high performing people on. A lot of sports people, obviously, because of their connections. But you'll get people on, say like Gary Lineker. They'll come on and they really delve deep into them and what they've done. So it's not like the chat show stuff. It's they really do delve deep with it. And the people, fair play to them, they open up and, you know, they start talking about all sorts of things. It's really good, really good.
I think it's just nice when you can kind of like connect with somebody and realise that we're all the same in a lot of ways. Like we've all got the same hang-ups and the same things that happen to, no matter how famous we are or how successful we are deemed. Do you know what I mean? Like people are just people, and you know, highs and lows happen to everybody. So I think I really appreciate that kind of open and honesty kind of thing. And like you said earlier on, the long formness of a podcast, you can get into it.
Aye. I think what I take away a lot of the time from a lot of these podcasts is, you know, these successful people, saying that, successful people that they chat to, when you listen to their backstory and their lives and just them talking, you can start seeing that the difference between like them, what makes them and normal people is that incessant drive where they just keep going, they keep going, they fail, but they keep going, they pick themselves up and they just keep going. And I find it quite inspiring to hear those sort of stories, because you're like, well, do you know what? If you can do it, then let's go for it. Let's keep going. See how we go.
So I mean, I listen to these things and I'm like, I've achieved nothing. I need to get my move on. You know, you listen to people like sometimes when I see other choreographers working, I'm like, oh, you need to get your act together, Lisa. Since a wee kick up the bum, sometimes a wee kick up the bahookie that I need.
But then you also sit back and think about what you have achieved, and you know, like you've got through 2 years of a pandemic being self-employed. That's if you're not like a brickie or a plumber or an electrician, that's blooming good work to have got through the last 2 years, because it's been tough.
It has been, yeah. I mean, I just I think it's just like looking forward. What's next? I'm a wee bit. I mean, I like to live in the moment. I like to be present as much as I can, because not looking too far ahead. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm like, what's next? What's happening next? Because I don't like celebrating. Because I don't like things ending, Bruce. So I have to move on. Move on to the next good thing. Don't dwell on a thing ending.
Well, all good things do have to come to an end, but we've got one more question.
Okay, I won't cry.
Stuart Bailey, given the choice, do you take the red pill or the blue pill? Also, what criteria do you apply when selecting people for interview? Well, we've covered that one, haven't we? That selecting people.
Side note.
But red pill or blue pill? Wow.
That's left field. I did not expect that question.
It is. Yeah, some of them are a bit like that. So, I mean, red pill, blue pill, that's Matrix, isn't it? But you can read into that what you want.
You go first. Then I'll go with your answer.
Right. It depends what you take the red pill and the blue pill to be, doesn't it? It's like, Okay, decision making in life. Do you go for the safe option, or do you go for this could turn out well, but it could be a total cluster? So I think for me, I used to be the one that would go the safe option, and now I would rather take a chance, and then if it doesn't work out, I'll adapt and overcome it, hopefully, and just keep working. I think that's more the person I am now, whereas before it was play the company man, safe, solid. Let's go that way.
I really admire that you recognise that in yourself first and foremost, that you've had that kind of transition and that you are somebody who just goes for it and then not worries about it later, but it's very much just like, let's do it. Because I don't think of myself as that. And I think people listening to this podcast will be like, well, she's just said that she's... Do you know what I mean? I'm like, no, I am like risk averse. Oh,
I'm surprised.
I can't even do a forward roll, Bruce. Like, I'm such a like as a dancer. I'm like, oh, don't put me upside down. No, and I'd like to be braver. I mean, it's a pure like the Brawn, the brave. I think that's why I thrive off other people, because when I have these conversations, I'm like, maybe you could. I really get inspired by other people because I'm like, you, Lisa, I've played it safe for far too long. Okay, I'm self-employed, but I'm not saving lives. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm lucky to do what I do, and I do work hard, and obviously I have a skill set. Like I'm not just making it up. Do you know what I mean? Like, but there's still lots to learn. Do you know what I mean? Like 11 years of being freelance, there's still lots to learn. I would like to be braver. I'd like to take more risks. I just don't. I'm always a bit, oh, what if that happens? And what if that happens? And yeah, I'm not a wee bit. I'm a big bit of a worrier.
I think you are a risk taker, but you just don't. You don't realize it. You don't appreciate it. You totally are. Like everything you just said is somebody that played it safe wouldn't have led the life that you've led up to now and the things that you've done. Maybe there's more that you wanted, but you feel like I don't know, you've withdrawn. Not withdrawn's the wrong word. Do you know what I mean? Like you could have cast your net wider, but you didn't. Yeah. You sort of directed it more, but you still cast that net. You're still gone for it.
Thank you. You're right. You've got me. You've psychoanalyzed me perfectly. Yeah, I do cast my net. I cast it and then I go, oh, that was nice. That's working. I'll just do more of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not good at then going, well, let's go a wee bit bigger, because you can. You know, I've done that with, my dance troupe. There was a point where we probably could have went way bigger. And I was just like, oh, no, but that, somebody's going to come and make it go wrong. And I'm like, who's this person? Who's this bad person? No bad things have happened to you. Like, you've been quite lucky in your life for no catastrophes to happen. But yeah, and I like to be a trusting person. I like to trust the universe. I think I'm a positive person, but I'm not always positive about my ability to make things possible. So, the turning 40 thing, I think, it's just an age, it's just a number. But a milestone birthday does make you go, this, when are you going to start being a bit braver? When are you going to be a bit Braw brave? So maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year. But you never know.
I'm sure it is. I'm kind of at that stage now, I think, where I kind of feel like I need to take a chance at something. I don't know what, but I feel like my whole YouTube thing, it's stagnant. I just feel like it's stagnant at the moment, and there's so many other people coming into this YouTube world that I'm like, you've got to be different. I hate being like beige. I hate being
You're so far from beige. It's unreal. Like, stop right there. No, you're not beige.
I'm just another person on a bike talking shit with a GoPro, and I'm like, I want to be different, but I'm not.
But you are, because you're you, and it's your experience, and it's your lived experience, and the things that you've achieved, and the things that you've done, and you have transitioned from one career to this, and you've made it work, and all the behind the scenes, all the editing the footage 15 hours, like that's all work and energy and effort and talent that you've put into the thing that basically essentially you're passionate about. And comparison is the thief of joy. So I think you can get caught up in the social media thing of like, oh, what they up to, oh, what they doing, and you're like, definitely. You're in your lane doing your thing, and okay, it's fine to want more and to be like, what's possible. I think that's totally healthy, and I think that's great. That just feeds the creativity. but also remember, like, you do you and nobody else can do you. Like, that's your unique selling point. Do you know what I mean? That's your USP. You're Bruce and you do you, and it's amazing and people love it. So I wouldn't, like, don't be down on that. Just
thank you very much, and likewise, exactly the same right back at you, isn't it? It's I think that's all we can be, isn't it? Is just be conscious of the fact that you're you and be the best you that you can be.
Definitely. Here.
Right, that to me sounds like a fantastic place to end the podcast at.
I've loved it. Thanks so much.
Me too,
I was
genuinely.
a wee bit nervous. I was like, oh
Were
no.
you?
Aye, because I'm just always like, oh, what have I got to say? But clearly people's ears are now bleeding. So
before we go, can I put the floor open to you? Please plug your podcast, plug any projects that you've got, any shout outs that you want to give.
That's kind. Yeah, I'd love if people want to come and check out the Brawn the Brave. We're on all the social media platforms. You'll find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. Just Braw Brave chats with Braw Brave people. Look up Bruce's episodes if you haven't listened to that. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Just to have a nice blather. It's been a total joy.
I'm just returning the love. I'm returning the favour that you showed me. Thank you so much for putting me on this little journey.
It's lovely to see what you're up to now and you're thriving, and I just wish more joy for you. Whatever you decide to do next, I'm sure it'll be awesome.
Thank you. Likewise. Well, whatever happens in the future, we'll have another chat, I'm sure.
I'm sure of it.
Right, folks, I'll leave all of Lisa's socials down below, all the connections. So if you listen to the podcast, make sure you check them out. And if you're watching the video, make sure you have a look at the vid description, give her a like, a follow the podcast and all the socials. Right, folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. I definitely have. Keep doing your thing. Get on out there whenever you can. Look after those that you love. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha! That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Lisa.